obviously you're not a golfer.
I must have drank me about 15 Dr. Peppers.
Congratulations. How do you feel?
I gotta pay.
We have heard the chimes at midnight, Master Robert.
You're an inanimate fucking object! You told I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Who the fuck has the goddamn gall to call his house on a Tuesday night? God!
What the fuck is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of 3 for 3. I am your introductory host this week, Mr. Jackson Workman, and I have with me my two good chums, Mr. Samuel Holler and Mr. Matthew Patterson. How are you fellas doing today?
Pretty good.
Alive.
It's Logan Lucky Day for me.
That's right. Are you feeling lucky, punk?
I'm feeling quite lucky. So much so, I'm going to drive my car through the front of a gas station.
There you go. You're going to beat up Seth MacFarlane in a bar fight.
I forget he's in that movie.
Yep. Yeah, the cast of that movie is insane. But yes, we have three quite interesting movies to talk about today. I think this will be a very fun episode. I want to go ahead and start with Mr. Holler's pick today,
Okay.
which is the film Ricochet.
Woo!
You go ahead and take that one away, Sam.
Starring Denzel Washington's cock.
Indeed.
We get him as a rookie cop, just trying to go to law school, become a lawyer, do his thing, and mass murderer John Lithgow, which is a foreshadow for his role in Dexter, decides to do some fuck shit per John Lithgow greatness. And so Denzel Washington busts him as the cop and kind of ruins his whole life, gets him sent to prison and everything, and Denzel Washington becomes famous. And flash forward a little time, Denzel is now the DA or assistant DA. He's a big deal within the community and whatnot, and Lithgow is breaking his way out of prison to get revenge upon Denzel.
Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Revenge he does get.
Yeah.
Say what?
Boy, does he get
And revenge he does get.
Oh yes, sweet, sweet revenge.
Oh shit.
Oh yes, it goes places. He gives him the clap,
Yeah.
among other
Get
things.
some slightly tweaking on heroin.
Yeah.
Slightly hooked on heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Ruins his marriage to a degree.
Yeah.
Or almost ruins it.
I have to say, his wife, like, it didn't even take that much for her to start doubting him. I noticed that.
Yeah.
I was just like, man, you're not even trying to take his side. Because there's that scene where this is like, I think the first or second lie, or like thing that seems like a lie that they're catching him in. And she's just immediately, he's like, he's trying to make me look crazy. And she's like, well, he's doing a good job. I'm like, you're already like believing that he did it. Like,
Just tie her to a chair and show her the tape of him going in the house and into the daughter's bedroom with the axe.
exactly.
And then we'll fucking see who's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is interesting because I remember way back when I was doing my old solo podcast, however many years ago that was. I had Matt on an episode and he mentioned this movie, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of it. So it was interesting finally seeing it because it was always something I was curious about ever since he mentioned it. And I feel like you guys probably felt similar to me about this one. I fuck with it. I assume you guys did as well.
100%.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The first time I saw it was with Sam and we were really drunk. And I wasn't sure if it was just like the time we were having that I liked it or if it was like actually a good movie. So it was nice to like confirm it is a good movie.
Yeah. It's definitely not a perfect movie. It's like it's one of those movies. It's from Russell Mulcahy, who directed Highlander, and it reminds me a lot of that because just like Highlander, it's a very there's so much goodness in it, and it's so entertaining, and it's so much fun. But every now and then you just get a scene where you're like, what the fuck? Like, that's stupid. Just every now and then you're just like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Because it's like, all right, you'll because the story is great. Um, you're really invested in the characters, and you're really invested in what's going on, and the action is great, and the performances are great, and the writing is really great for a lot of it. But then every now and then something very silly will happen. Like just him stripping down all the way to his underwear while trying to disarm this guy. I'm just like, this is kind of silly. Like, do we really
What
need
is where did
this?
this tactic come from?
Right, exactly. Like, and John Lithgow's just patiently standing there, allowing him to completely undress to the waist. And I'm just like, okay, I mean, give the ladies in the audience what they want, I guess, but I just think this looks a little silly. And other weird moments where again, like the DA just barging into the men's locker room unannounced while Denzel's got his cock out, and just not only is that just bizarre in and of itself, but the fact that she doesn't immediately turn around and say, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, please put your underwear on." They have a 5-minute conversation with him just standing in front of the locker door, hiding his dick. Like there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just like, what the fuck is happening right now? This is really strange. And John Lithgow and Jesse Ventura having a gladiator death match
Why
and
the fuck was Jesse Ventura in the movie? Sorry, that throws me off. I forgot he was in this. I was like, I had to like look it up because I was like, why?
yeah, I had no idea
Gladiator
because I didn't
deathmatch
see his
was
name in the
wild.
credits, so that was random. But them just being able to have a gladiator death match with spears in the prison mess hall, and that's just allowed. I'm just like, what? Like this is so there were kind of
Holy
moments of silliness throughout the whole thing, but overall, when
What you
you
gonna do when you get out? I'm gonna go home to your home and fuck your wife and your daughter and probably
make
your
you
dog
don't.
too.
John Lithgow was out of control in this movie. I mean, just
His
One of
complete.
the
eyes
best
are
ones.
scary in it.
Yeah, he's incredible. And see, but when you get past the moments of silliness, like it's a really like entertaining, genuinely like just fun, suspenseful action movie. Where and it's funny because it came out the same year as the piece of shit remake of Cape Fear, and I honestly think that this is a better Cape Fear remake than that was. It's just like, you're genuinely on the edge of your seat throughout the whole thing, just waiting to like you're so invested in like, Denzel catching John Lithgow. Every time John Lithgow does something to fuck with his life, like you feel it, you're upset, you're concerned about it, you're just like, oh my God, how is he gonna get out of that whole sequence where he comes over disguised as the power guy. I was
Mhm.
on the edge of my fucking seat throughout that entire sequence. Like I was like, how the fuck are they going to survive this? Like, how are the kids going to survive? How is Denzel going to get home in time? And he doesn't, but that's the whole point. See, he doesn't kill them, but because that would just be too easy. He's playing
Yeah.
the long game. And yeah, that's what's so again, like the original Cape Fear, it's interesting how because I always said one of the biggest problems with the remake of Cape Fear, I mean among many, it's just a very bad movie, but like one of the many problems is in the original, the whole thing that's scary about the bad guy is he's not he's not really trying to kill them necessarily. He's not I mean he does try to at the end, but he's not like this big scary like tattooed monster who has these supernatural like powers like Robert De Niro does in the remake.
Yeah.
Like he's just a dude, and his power, what makes him scary isn't the way he looks or the way he acts. It's the fact that he can take the legal system and completely just turn it against, the main character, and just how easily he can do that. And I feel like they did that here, where
Yeah.
again, it's like it's scary how easily John Lithgow can just so easily ruin this dude's life without really trying that hard, without really doing anything. I mean, he can just through using the media and just through public appearances and everything, just ruin the dude's life. And although sometimes I did think it was a bit of a stretch, yeah, not quite sure how he was able to um fill the water or take the water out of the pool and then fill it back up. That just seemed a little like it has to be realistic what he can do in order for it to be scary. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, you can just make him do whatever he wants. And it was for the most part, but then occasionally they had him do things like that that were a little strange. But again, it was cool just, their dynamic was great. I thought, John Lithgow just being so obsessed, so maniacally obsessed, it made him so hateable and so threatening and such a scary good villain. And again, other than the eye, they didn't feel the need to like make him, I don't know, like monstrous looking. Like he's just a dude, and he just sold it through his performance, which really helped.
Yeah,
But
I really liked Lithgow in this, and I really liked the relationship between Denzel Washington and Ice-T.
Yeah, his
yeah,
character arc is great.
Yeah, the like respect they have for each other is awesome.
yeah, that
And
was that was definitely one of the most interesting parts of the movie, and a lot of the scenes they had together. Not only was it just an interesting dynamic, but I just loved a lot of the scenes they had together, where it was just like, yeah, no matter because like in one scene they're pretty much ready to kill each other, it looks like, and then later in the movie they're willing to like risk their lives for each other. So it's a very cool, interesting dynamic they have.
One of my favorite lines is when Ice-T is like tells his henchmen, he's like, protect these little young ladies with your life. And he just goes, bet.
Yeah, I heard
It's
that.
just like I don't know why that just got me.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and it's funny because it was written, the script by Steve D'Souza, who obviously is like on the Mount Rushmore of action writers. And like a lot of his scripts, um, again, some of it can be silly, but a lot of it, like he has this ability to, even his, not all of them. I mean, some of his scripts are just downright terrible, but a lot of times, like movies like Commando and The Running Man, the scripts can be a little silly, but there's just this innate just thing about it that just it entertains you no matter what. Like The Running Man to me is another one where it's just like, okay, this isn't like the most structurally sound movie, but damn, is it a good time?
yeah,
Like you're invested in it regardless. And he also is one of the kings of the action one-liners. And
the very last
Denzel
line of this movie.
Denzel
Yeah.
has one of the greatest action one-liners. This shit was worthy of Schwarzenegger. I was just like, what does he say at the end when John Lithgow finally dies? I think you got the point there, Blake. I was like, that was A
Yeah.
plus for sure.
That
Um,
whole ending was insane with him up on top of the roof with the flares, just running around like crazy and
Denzel
a good
was
jump.
Denzel was fucking giving it his all in this
That
one for sure.
the one scene where he's in the courtroom as the DA and he's doing that normal talking thing, and then he just does the like pretends to run out of the courtroom, starts screaming. Literally, it was like I forgot that was in there, so it just caught my attention because I was like, okay, he's gonna do this, and then I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that was he was going for it with this one. He was really fantastic. I thought the whole cast really was just outstanding. Everybody was really pulling their weight. There were some people in this who I was not expecting to see. Rip to the fucking late John Amos, who had a small part in this, who's always just so fantastic. And yeah, like Jesse Ventura, I had no idea he was going to be in it. The Bionic Woman
Yeah.
herself, Lindsay Wagner as the DA, that shit was wild. Um,
Kevin
and
Pollak.
everybody, and
Kevin
apparently,
Pollak.
and Kevin Pollak, well, see, here's the thing about Kevin Pollak. I already knew his character was going to die
Uh,
because I saw him talk about it in an interview once. So I mean, I probably would have figured it out either way, but because he had, best friend who's going to die in his arms written all over him. But that was still a sad moment when that happened. I was like, oh, fuck you, John Lithgow.
I
And
love when
apparently that
he's telling
kid,
them.
say what?
I love when he's telling the wife, like, just giving her an update, and then she's just mad at him, like, well, then what are you doing here? Like, go look. And he's just like, oh, all right, and books it.
Yep. And then the kid who's John Lithgow's little henchman, that's apparently either Robert Evans' son or grandson,
hmm.
Josh Evans. I was just like, how random. And he didn't act that much, but he was in this. So I was like the most random group of people. Um, but yeah, Sam, like you said, the climax, the whole thing was just wild. Like, not only just with Denzel just going for it so much, but just again, the whole thing was just like, I thought it went on a little too long, but again, it was still entertaining. Just them climbing on the tower and man, when that was such a great payoff because earlier when they have the arm wrestling match,
Yeah.
um, like Denzel manages to beat him, and you think like, of course Denzel would beat him. And then John Lithgow, they have the other one on top of the tower, and he freaking slams his arm into the spike. I was like, oh my God. That was such an unexpected like reversal there, and just
Yeah.
pretty crazy. Um, but yeah, I would definitely say this one was definitely, despite some of the kind of the silliness and the flaws of it, a very, very good time. I had a really, I enjoyed myself a lot watching this one for sure.
I think it's just fits that right vibe that like you could probably watch it during the day, but if you just like just kind of like it feels like it fits the vibe no matter what kind of thing. You can just sit down and enjoy it rather than having to like think too much, but also there's a lot to think about because you like you said you get invested in the ways that Lithgow is manipulating Denzel and everything and you want him to succeed and you see him just fall as a person because he's so perceived as crazy that he just starts to actually be crazy. And but that's what you need. You need to fight crazy with crazy and then you will win.
I'm
Sometimes
pretty sure
that's
this
all
was
it
just an
takes.
HBO movie too. Like I don't know if this went to theaters or not because
Hmm.
I want to say I don't know for sure, but I feel this feels like an HBO kind of just
Yeah, it went to theaters.
it did.
But it was something I was wondering about because I know it was HBO produced. So
Yeah, because I remember seeing the HBO logo on the DVD that Sam had. That's why I thought it was just because I didn't know they made movies for theaters back then.
the
Hey,
cast
they really
is
don't.
the cast is too big for it to just be an HBO movie. I mean, like to have
I would
Denzel,
think so, but
all these other actors, there's no way. But yeah, I saw it did like modestly well at the box office. So
good to hear.
but yeah, it definitely I give a shout out to. And apparently um the scene where he captures Denzel, apparently they cut a lot of that down. Apparently there were a lot of scenes, like violent scenes that they cut out of the movie
Hmm.
because the test audiences weren't fucking with it.
That's wild.
There was like a scene where he like tortures him and he like vomits all over himself and they cut it out because the test audiences thought it was too disturbing.
Give
But
me the vomit scene.
release the vomit cut. Um,
The
but
true heroin cut.
exactly. Um, but yeah, I think again, yeah, just a lot of great action. Honestly, some really great dialogue. I thought a lot of the dialogue popped pretty well. And I think great performances, unbelievably suspenseful for a lot of it. And John Lithgow just being a crazy motherfucker. And like you said, that scene was insane where he's just like, I'll fuck your wife, your daughter, probably your dog. Like this
And
motherfucker's
then
out
shoots
of,
him in the head.
I know,
With
I
the
did not
freaking
see
10
that
gun, yeah.
coming. He killed the book guy. That was what was fucked
Yeah.
up to me. Like that was the guy who motivated him to fucking like keep living and he killed him. Like terrible.
Of
Um,
course, he comes at the right moment too. The hey, young man.
yeah, that was fucked
Like,
up.
literally just was like cuts to him just walking up out of almost nowhere. I swear to God, it's like where the fuck was he walking from?
I guess he was just getting there with his truck. I don't know. It was pretty
Yeah, it's just the
weird.
funniest thing. It's literally like, oh, he's got a cut to old man. Like Jesus.
But yeah, and again, just a cool because like you said, Sam, you could watch it from the lens of oh, this is just an action movie. I don't have to think about it. But you can also watch it through the lens of like, oh no, it's an interesting exploration of like how people can be made to look, corrupt or bad by certain forces, outside of their control and how sometimes they have to kind of, I don't know, get a little crazy to fight it. It's just because it's just so interesting just seeing like what Denzel has to like how quickly he falls and what he has to do in order to make it right. And how he tells the reporter at the end to go fuck herself.
Yeah.
That was funny. Who
You keep
apparently
saying
that reporter was also in Die Hard.
Huh.
Like that actress played that same reporter in Die Hard, which Steve D'Souza also wrote. So
They're in the same world.
yeah, same interconnected universe. John Amos was in both universes because he was in Die Hard too. So
we missed the Denzel Bruce Willis crossover.
that's what we needed. We needed to see them just kick John Lithgow's ass together.
Ricochet hard.
There you go. But okay, I guess we'll go ahead and move on to movie number two. I guess we'll just
Oh,
go ahead and talk about mine next, which
Yep.
would be Shattered Glass, which is a film from Mr. Billy Ray. This was his directorial debut.
but not Billy Ray Cyrus,
No,
which
I'm
I
glad
thought
you
of
said that. I was
at
thinking
first.
not Billy Ray Cyrus, although that would be a hell of a movie. I would love to see his take on this for sure. But yeah, it's his directorial debut. He wrote and directed it, and it is from 2003. And it's based on a true story of a journalist named Stephen Glass, who wrote for a very influential magazine in the late 90s known as the New Republic. Not to be confused with the Old Republic.
Yep.
But this is not the Knights of the Old Republic. I just want to make that clear. And the reason I make that joke is because Stephen Glass is played by the one and only Hayden Christensen, Anakin Skywalker
Oh,
himself. And it's a true story about how Stephen Glass, it turned out he was a very popular journalist over there at the New Republic, and everyone really liked him a lot because he was a really charming dude. But it turned out he was a fucking liar and an asshole, and he made up almost every article he ever wrote, and then the magazine had to basically deal with the fallout of that. Um, and yeah, it's got a crazy cast.
Stellar cast, yeah.
Peter Sarsgaard, Chloe Sevigny, a lot of Hank Azaria, Melanie Linsky, all these people. It's just all-star cat. Rosario Dawson and Steve Zahn and
yeah, I was caught
Anakin
off
and
guard by
Ahsoka.
Rosario Dawson.
Say what?
I was caught off guard by Rosario Dawson. I could not say that right. Rosario Dawson.
You just said it exactly right. But yeah, Anakin and Ahsoka reuniting once again.
hmm
But yeah, so I just have to say right off the bat, this was definitely, I enjoyed all three movies, but this was my favorite for sure. Um, this was honestly just a phenomenal movie. I think Billy Ray is just,
When
go ahead.
when Peter Skarsgård basically says "Go kill yourself," even though he doesn't say anything, he's just "I'm
Second
not going
second
anywhere with
movie in
you."
a row where we've had somebody telling somebody go kill themselves.
That's true. He doesn't directly say it this time, but yeah, pretty close. But yeah, I think that Billy Ray not only is just a great writer, obviously, Oscar nominated writer, but man, he is a criminally underrated director. Have either of you seen his other movie, Breach?
Mm-mm.
No.
With Chris
Oh,
Cooper.
I'm one of these days I'm gonna pick that for this show so you guys can see it. It is incredible. And so is this. And you know, I for a long time I mainly knew him for his writing work. I didn't know much about the movies he had directed. He's only done three, and Secret in Their Eyes wasn't the greatest movie ever. It was fine, but you know, but this and Breach are both just incredible. This is my favorite that he's ever done.
Mm.
And man, what a great movie. Just a stellar script. Incredible performances. Hayden Christensen should have been nominated for a fucking Oscar for this movie. I mean, I think he honestly should have won
When
something for
yeah, when
this.
he like says the lie to him, but he makes him repeat it with by looking him dead in the eyes, the look on Hayden's face is just like, oh,
Yeah.
He is incredible in this. And this was a very bizarre experience for me because before this, the only non-Star Wars thing I had ever seen Hayden Christensen in was his episode of Goosebumps when he was a
Oh,
kid.
No, I thought you were gonna say takers for some reason.
Yeah, so this was
and
pretty
not that.
much the first adult non-Star Wars role I've seen him do, so it was like really wild. And I know he's a good actor because if you watch him in like Ahsoka or other things, he's a good actor, and I think people know that now, because he's beloved now as he should be, instead of being a pariah. But I've never seen him give a performance like this. I mean, he is genuinely the way he manages to go from because I mean, and the whole movie is masterful the way it does this. Like the way he starts off as this like likable, kind of shy, dorky guy who has a lot of charisma about him in spite of his kind of awkwardness, um, to this absolute fucking manipulator by the end of the movie who you just want to hit in the face. I mean, you're just like the fucking transformation over the course of the movie. That scene at the end where he's like talking to Peter Skarsgård and he's breaking down and he's just like, I told you, I don't know what's gonna happen if you don't drive me to the airport. Like, just at that moment, not only is he just incredible in that scene, but the range of emotions you've seen him go through to get to that point. I mean, it's just you've seen him run the full spectrum. It's just unbelievable. And I just think that the movie itself is so clever, like how it handles the subject matter. Like I've never seen anything like it where you really think at first, like, I mean, even if you know, because I knew that the story was about him lying and making the articles up, but even still, like to see how different like he is at the beginning versus at the end. And just Peter Sarsgaard's character to me, that was one of the most fascinating like aspects of the film was it's an examination of how a lot of times in these kinds of spaces in particular, um, if you're just a charismatic dude who everyone likes and gets along with, people will take your side when shit goes down. Doesn't matter if you're the right one or the wrong one in the situation. People took Glass's side because they liked him. It didn't matter how obviously wrong he was. He was charming. He always made everyone laugh in the meetings. And, they still were convinced that Peter Sarsgaard was the bad guy in the situation up until the end because he wasn't a bad dude. He just didn't talk to anybody
Well,
that
he
much,
was
you
a bit
know?
scummy when he got Hank Azaria fired,
Well, he
and
didn't get Hank Azaria fired. He was going to get fired no matter what. And he was basically just like, I'm replacing him with somebody. I want it to be you. And again, that's what I think is so brilliant is because they do such a good job of making you think at first, oh, Peter Sarsgaard's going to be the bad guy of the movie. And cast literally just because it was him, because he just always plays such hateable, scummy characters. Like, I think it's just it's one of the best instances of like, trick casting that I've ever seen. They clearly cast him in that part because they knew it would make you think. It's like when they cast Gary Oldman in Harry Potter, where it's like, they cast him to make the audience think, oh, he's going to be the bad guy because he only plays bad guys at this time. And then when you find out he's a good guy, it's like, oh shit, what? I didn't expect that because it was Gary Oldman. Same here, where it's like, oh, well, you only play scummy douchebags, so that's what you're going to be here. And then at the beginning of the movie, you're just like, fuck you for replacing Hank Azaria. But then you see over the course of the movie, like he never really does anything wrong. He fights for the
yeah,
integrity of the magazine. He even says, because while Glass and the others are in the back room talking shit about him, saying like, oh, this is all just, he has an agenda. He just wants to get rid of everyone who was loyal to Hank Azaria. And you see him talking on the phone to the other magazine. And while they're saying that about him, he's saying, hey, man, give him a chance. He's just a kid. He got it wrong. I don't want to see his reputation ruined. It's like, no, he's a good dude who's fighting for this guy who hasn't really liked him or treated him well since he became the editor.
at
And
all. Yeah.
he's still fighting for him. But they just, again, his whole mode of operation, unlike Glass, he's not charismatic. He's not funny. He's not outgoing. He's quiet, he's reserved, he doesn't really talk to anybody. And because of that, they just all don't like him. And so many times it's just such a, I think, a great examination of how often that does and or can happen in these situations where you think like, well, if everybody is saying bad things about this person or doesn't like this person, it must mean they're an asshole. It's like, no, it's just dynamics in the workplace exist in this way to where if someone just isn't an outgoing, extrovert, they just don't like the guy, even though he's a good dude who's fighting for them and is trying to protect the integrity of the magazine. Whereas the dude who is outgoing and the dude who they do like, is the scumbag who's making up the stories. And it's like, I just thought that whole thing, because they don't really hold your hand with that at all. They don't
Yeah.
really, they just let you see it. Like you gradually just kind of find out like, oh, Peter Sarsgaard's the one who we should be rooting for, not
Yeah.
against. You kind of just gradually realize that over the course of the movie. And that's why it's such a nice moment at the end when they do finally support him and they sign the letter and they fully reject. And again, I just love how Chloe Sevigny's character is so, up until the last minute, wholeheartedly rejecting him, even though it's abundantly clear he faked all the articles. She's still just trying to like bring office politics into it, just like, really? You're just going to try to get rid of every one of us who was loyal to him? And Peter Sarsgaard's like, that's not what this is, man. He fucking clearly fabricated this shit. And it's just, again, people can just hold on to that shit so tightly because they just don't want to see what's really going on. I just thought the whole thing was just such a fascinating examination of that whole kind of thing. And I also just think that again, something that I read afterwards made it even more illuminating. Because you notice throughout the movie, um, Glass will constantly like make like nice comments or do things like when they're at the party and Melanie Linsky's like, why did you put this thing in the fridge for me? And he's like, well, you said you prefer it to be cold instead of room temp when you go to parties. And she's like, Steven, that was 3 years ago that I said that. And he's constantly talking to the secretary about her lipstick or her eyeshadow and complimenting her on it. And I read afterwards a quote from the real guy that Peter Sarsgaard played. He would really do things like that. And he said basically the reason why was to make people think that he cared about them and to make people think that he was paying attention and going out of his way to help them so that if he was ever in a situation where he was exposed for his lies, they would take his side. They would just be like, oh, well, Steven would never do that. He's nice. He thinks about us. He compliments us. He remembers things that we say. It was part of that ploy to make him even more likable. And he basically said, we all thought he was a nice guy who cared about us, but he was really just sizing us up and trying to, you know, just play us basically to make us think he could never do anything like that. And it's just
That's crazy.
it makes it even more layered and fascinating, especially since again, they don't hold your hand on that in the movie. That's something that you wouldn't even think to look for unless maybe you watch it a second time or you read a quote about it afterwards like I did. I just love that. Like it doesn't hold your hand, it just lets it speak for itself.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that he lied when I started the movie. I literally just clicked on it on Prime and just started it. So when the whole lie thing came out, I was like, did he? And I was kind of waiting for it to turn out like that he was. I was rooting for him pretty much up until the end when I kind of was like, damn. But I didn't really look anything up until the end of the movie,
Yeah.
just to like, because I didn't really think it was going to be that deep. I thought it was going to be more like he writes a really crazy piece and then people like try to make it seem like he lied or something. But no, that was definitely a surprise for me. And
Yeah.
I,
And again,
Pretty
that's
much by the
because
time, oh,
go ahead.
pretty much by the time they go to that office tower building where the conference was held and they're closed on Sundays, you're like, it's over for you, dude. Like,
Yeah, at about that point, you're like, oh, this fucker's busted.
yeah,
Like, and again, that's what I mean is like Peter Sarsgaard really tried to give him every chance. He's like, take me down there and show me. I want to believe you. All right. And then he was like, I'll suspend you for 2 years, but you can still keep your job. And, doing even when he really shouldn't have. I mean, what he did, even before he found out he totally lied, even just making up the sources, that's a fireable offense. Like Hank Azaria even said it. He's just like, dude, I mean, you kind of, that is a fireable offense. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
so it's like he didn't have to keep giving him chances, but he did because he wanted to protect him. And he just kept taking advantage of that. And he kept manipulating him. And just, again, it's such a fascinating just character study on the guy. I think it just really, and again, the way it's written is so great, but I mean, Hayden's performance really is just so layered. I mean, I really just think there are so many dimensions to it that he brings. I mean, you see every side of him. You see like the charming side, the nervous side, the full-on manipulator side. He just doesn't stop lying until the last scene of the movie. It's just,
Where do you think the classroom stuff was taking place? Do you think that was like right when he first started working for the
I don't think it was real.
like oh you don't think it was real?
I think
Yeah,
it
because
was,
I liked how it was framed within the classroom. The whole classroom setting was like that's how the movie was set, you know.
yeah, I think it was just while he's sitting there, that last scene where he's sitting in the office with Peter Sarsgaard, I think he's just daydreaming about that the whole time. Like that's
Because yeah, I
his
mean it
fan.
cuts back and the whole classroom's empty other than him as well. So
Yeah, because I think that's just his fantasy that he's daydreaming about. Like, rather than feeling guilt over what he's done, he's still just kind of fantasizing like this is how it should be for me, Because I am a good journalist and I deserve this. And it's like, no, man, you can dream about it all you want, but yeah, and that again, that was so because I figured I was like, something is gonna happen with this, like, this classroom thing. I'm like, this can't take place afterwards. So something is gonna happen here. And it being like, at least that's how I interpret it. It being it in his head, daydreaming about it. I didn't see that. That was such a good, like, pull the rug out from under you, Just
yeah.
like, wow, up until the end, this guy's still daydreaming about being like the perfect journalist. Because the whole setup is just a little too perfect. Like the teacher's so proud of him and all the
Yeah.
students just love him. And it's like
Because I
his
mean, especially if
fantasy.
this had happened, she would not be proud to have him as her student
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
having
And
him do this.
and
So
none of the students would want to hear him speak either, I imagine,
yeah.
if they knew he was a liar. Um, and yeah, the whole thing, just an unbelievably fascinating character piece and just examination on how easily things like this can happen in a place like that. Like it a lot of times doesn't have anything to do with, just them wanting to do the right thing. It's just about like, oh, I like this person, so he couldn't have done this, and I don't like that person, so he's the asshole in the situation. But that's again why it's nice how at the end the staff does come together to support Peter Sarsgaard and do all that. And you know, also funny enough, there's a lot of great people in this movie, but the guy who plays the scary owner of the magazine, who's the
Yeah.
dickbag that gets Hank Azaria fired, that's Ted Kotcheff, the director of First Blood and Weekend at Bernie's, apparently,
Oh, whoa.
which is the most
That's
random
rough.
shit ever.
Huh.
Uh, but so weird little appearance from him.
Yeah,
And he's a prick too, because Hank Azaria deserved better.
exactly.
He was one of my
I hate
favorite.
that most of the play or like falsification was during his time as the head.
Which sucks because he was like, as we saw, the perfect editor. I mean, just really awesome dude who stood up for them. And it sucks that even someone like him was taken by his lies, It's just
Yeah.
like, oh man, I hate that you have that blemish now. And it all took place on your watch. And Hank Azaria, I have to say, he was only in a few scenes, but he was a standout, I thought.
Mhm.
Just really, he's just such a ringer, no matter what he's doing. He always just comes in and he made that character so likable, and so you were so sad when he got fired. And just he's someone who can play such goofy, cartoony characters over here, and such unbelievably straight, normal characters over here, just with the same amount of expertise. He's just a pro. Um, but yeah, I can't say enough.
Has it in his notes. Okay. They're in his notes. You cannot say he was a liar. They're in the notes.
Exactly. They said that so many times. Yeah, I was just like, oh my God, one more thing in your fucking notes. I love Steve Zahn too. He was just fucking with him the whole time. That was just,
I love that he immediately like caught onto the phone thing and had her call at the same time as him, and
hmm. Yeah, I was,
the the website, like how that night where Hayden Christensen's like working late and the dude brings him coffee. It's like, at least I feel like, I don't know if it was, it looked like the website page that he was like making the website while that happened, and then you see the website and it's dumb as fuck.
yeah, I wasn't paying attention in the moment, but I read afterwards. Yeah, there's you can see it on his computer screen in that scene. Yeah, where he's making the website that night. And I was like, oh, he thought of everything. That diabolical genius.
Yeah.
Um,
I think this movie also kind of fits into like early 2000s office-based movies that's like, set in an office at like night, usually like that kind of lighting with the cubicles and shit, which I
yeah,
really enjoyed. Another,
I
I
love.
really wanted him to the car to get hit when he runs that stop sign.
I was expecting. I was like, if Peter Sarsgaard got in that car with him and took him to the airport, I had a feeling that might just happen again.
Yeah.
I had a feeling maybe Peter Sarsgaard's side of the car is going to get hit and they're not going to miss this time.
Yeah.
But that's why I was like, don't you dare get in that car with him. Don't you do it.
I don't
But
know what's gonna happen, okay?
yeah. And it to your point, Matt, I do love I have a fondness for early to mid 2000s like, kind of office movies like this or just kind of more low budget movies in general like this where, you know, I just like kind of dramas like that. I like the look and the feel of them, and I haven't seen one in a while, so it was nice. I had a feeling before I started this I was really going to enjoy it. It just seemed like my exact kind of movie. So
yeah.
um, it it's sad to once again see good old Annie be corrupted by the dark side, but seems to happen to him everywhere he goes.
They will bow to the First Order.
He will finish what he started. Adam Driver will eventually. Um, or something. But yeah, just fantastic time. Thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed this. Hayden deserved an Oscar nomination, if not a win for this. I just want to make that.
Who else was nominated that year?
I know Sean Penn won for Mystic River, um,
Mm.
which that's hard to argue against. He was incredible in that movie, but um, I don't remember who else was there. Um, I want to say it was
Ben Kingsley for House of Sand and Fog.
okay.
Bill Murray, Lost in Translation.
Hmm.
Jude Law for Cold Mountain. And Johnny Depp for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Most of those okay. Jude Law for Cold Mountain.
That's the one I'm like, you could have swapped him out for
Yeah.
Hayden.
He barely even says anything in that movie. I mean, yeah, okay.
All in the
We'll
eyes.
just scribble out Jude Law and
And put Hayden in.
put
Would be
Hayden in.
uh,
But Sean Penn will still win.
Yeah.
yeah. But well, now let us move on to the last film of this week, which would be Mr. Patterson's pick, Black Dynamite. Take it away, good sir.
Dynamite. Dynamite.
I'm gonna have that in my head the whole rest of the day now.
Yeah. Yeah, so my choice was Black Dynamite, which is it's kind of basically a movie. It's basically a like parody movie that is very much like you can tell they're making a movie while also acting. Um, it's kind of blaxploitation parody. Not kind of, it is. And it's starring Michael J. White and written also by him, and probably one of my favorite roles of his. And
Honestly, same.
um, basically his brother gets killed, and he has to come back to the streets to find out why he got killed and avenge his death. Because in a flashback, as we see, he was told not to let his brother get on drugs or die, and he fails at both of those things. His brother is on drugs and dead.
She would
So
roll over in her grave if she saw this.
yeah. And the movie is to me, it's really funny. It's very self-aware, but like it's like it's hard to say because like literally there's scenes where like he'll stand up and the boom mic's just right above him and he just continues acting, but like he'll just
Yeah,
glance at
yeah,
it.
he's like
Like,
looking at it.
um, so yeah, uh it's
He's
just
a
like
kung
in
fu wizard.
the kung fu, yeah.
That's right.
And then the part where he just fights a bunch of people in his freaking dojo, like not even just in his house, like to train, but then ends up like killing them. And he's about to break the bricks, and then the phone rings, and he's like, "Who the hell's interrupting my kung fu?"
And he
Like,
can't put the phone down.
just
Yeah, he was struggling.
a bunch of small shit like that. Like there's the one part where the dudes pull up to shoot him up, and then the one guy does not put the car in park, and so it just starts
Yeah.
rolling forward really quick, and he's got to slam like they just cut away from it real quick. It's just I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It's got the one of the probably wildest plot lines ever that literally goes like farther than you would expect it to even go in any way that makes sense. But
God, the
and some
fact
good
that,
cameos in there too from Arsenio Hall and Bokeem Woodbine.
oh
And
yeah.
probably more that I'm missing, but that's the two that I can think of off the top of my head. But
Oh,
yeah, I don't know. What did you guys think? Is this both of you guys' first time watching it, or
yeah.
Yeah.
okay?
I never even heard of it before you recommended it. So um I had a blast with this one. I think it like first of all, it's very funny, very entertaining, a lot of great performances, and it's man, I miss movies like this, just the classic spoof that you just even at this time in 2009 had kind of gone out of fashion. So like let alone now, you never see this kind of movie now. And it just and this is the highest compliment I can give a spoof movie, it just very Mel Brooksy, just like classic, like just such a loving, hilarious homage to and just send up of the thing it's parodying. And but see, here's what's interesting about it. Here's what was interesting about it to me for the first like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, it didn't lean like that hard into the spoof side of it for me. Like obviously it was to a degree, but it was more just kind of trying to just faithfully recreate a blaxploitation film. And then when we hit about the 25-30 minute mark, it just starts leaning all the way into the spoof territory. And it got I mean, it was funny before, but it got really like, again, Mel Brooksy, really funny, just the things that they were doing. Like, again, it was like before it was like a nice little wink and a nod, but then they were just full on like blinking in your face and like bobbing their head up and down. It was like, oh wow, we're
I
just
love the
going for it.
lady who was like, "What we gonna do with Black Dynamite?" And she takes a drag of her cigarette and then coughs. And
And
and then
just
it like
shit.
zooms in on her face like ever so slightly as she's like talking.
And like shit
I
when
think her
he
cigarette's not even lit at one point.
Yeah.
It's just straight up like not lit, and
one
she's
of the
still.
funniest scenes to me was when he shoots the guy in the donut costume. How did you know donuts don't wear alligator shoes?
I
I,
like the one where they're fighting in the thing, and then Bolt, like the guy who plays Bullhorn, like he goes to hit the dude and he smacks him, and then the dude's like motherfucker, and then they just cut back
that
to
was
him
when
and
it
like
really
punching.
started for me. That scene, I was like, okay, we haven't done anything that overtly spoofy yet. And then it just kind of kept building from there. And I love even subtle things. Like at one point, the orphanage, there's a sign or a plaque that just says orphanage established 1969. Like there's no name, it just says orphanage. And that was funny. And I love how like lots of other moments. One of the funniest fucking scenes I've seen in a movie in a minute is that big ass scene where they're in the Waffle House and they're just like deducing everything.
Yeah, the
Aha, and
Eminem.
785 BC. And what's the new name for this? Aries and Mars.
Like they
And
all are so like knowledgeable
goes
about it. They
on
all
for like 5 minutes. And they just keep fucking going. And I'm just like, this is fucking hilarious. I love this. Like, again, just that classic spoof style of comedy I just love, where it's just so absurd and so goofy and just so hilarious. And okay, so a lot of funny stuff, a lot of overtly very funny things. It went from 0 to 100 real fucking quick when they run up into that guy's room and he's got a tiny little dick. I cannot tell you how much that shit took me off guard. As
They're like, can we
goofy and
kill
over the top as we had gotten by that point,
him?
that just like I was like, what the
They're
fuck?
like,
Oh,
do
Should
you
we
want
kill him?
to
and who's the only one person who would want to give smack to school children and make black men's penises small? Goddamn Richard Nixon with
Richard
fucking nunchucks.
fucking Nixon.
Yep.
Didn't see
That
that coming either.
the best part about that is you think like, oh, Richard Nixon gets caught, like he's just sitting there behind the desk, and then he pulls out the nunchucks and he's like, "Come at me, motherfucker!" Just like what?
So good
And they
explanation
start
for this, I
fighting.
promise.
The whole thing. And just again, the scene where they kill the dude with the little dick, where they're just like, should we kill him? Do you want to live, my brother? Do you want to live? They just shoot him. The whole thing was just too much. It was so funny. I loved it.
And then
I
there's
love
the
the
scene
part
where he
two.
goes into the like the drug dealer's den to be like, I cannot support anybody who like deals drugs to the community. And the one two's like, but Black Dynamite, we deal drugs to the community.
Well, be that as it may, if I ever see you doing it, then you're gonna have a big problem.
And that
And
scene
then
was so funny. That scene was hilarious in general. But the fact that like all of a sudden you've got like 5 or 6 big actors just cameoing in that scene that never show up again. Like you've got Arsenio Hall, Bokeem Woodbine, Oba Babatunde, Cedric Yarborough, like all these, fairly well-known actors. I'm just like, I remember watching it being like, damn, they brought some people out for this. And then that's the only time you ever see them.
Yep.
But yeah, and God, just so funny the whole way through. And just again, one of my favorite parts where it's just like,
And that little kid, he said something to me. And I couldn't tell what he said because I don't speak Chinese. And I know he said, I don't have to speak Chinese to know that he said, why Black Dynamite? Why?
And he's talking about being in Vietnam.
Right?
And then he
But yeah, one last thing I wanted to say at least just was that even though it was like a spoof movie, the fun part about having Michael Jai White in it is that he can do his own stunts. And so they never used a stunt double for him.
and a lot
But
of those stunts looked like that part where he like kicks the light. I was like, that looked real.
yeah, yeah.
No, he's a badass in this movie, and it's definitely my favorite role I've seen him in for sure.
I
Yeah,
feel like he doesn't usually get this much range.
yeah, usually when I see him, it's not in a particularly big part. He always makes an impression, but it's usually not in a leading part. So seeing him in such a big leading role where he gets to do so much like this is really cool. And Sam, you were gonna say before the thing cut you off earlier, one of the funniest parts of the movie was when he pimp slaps the first lady.
Into the china cabinet.
First lady, I'm sorry I pimp slapped you into that china cabinet. But I shot at you, Black Dynamite. It was entirely within reason.
Well, maybe if he would connect it, it would have been
Yeah.
entirely within reason. But you did not connect. So I think perhaps it was a bit excessive. And I betrayed my own morals by pimp slapping you into that china cabinet.
And then she like goes on, she's like, no, but I shot you.
Yeah. Just like, no, but
And
I shot at you, Black Dynamite.
But you did not hit me, First Lady.
he has to like say it like twice.
Yeah. And I didn't
And
realize I've
then
been
like
looking
her
at her.
crawling over to his leg for the final shot of the movie.
And the love interest just burst through the door at the last second.
She's because the White House just let her right in. It's like
Right.
it does nothing about it. It's just funny. The
Um,
stupid pose they do, where she like slides over to like, so she can grab onto his leg, but she's not over there, so she's just like,
Mhm.
shit.
And I love how I was like looking at her and I was like, damn it, I know who that is. She looks familiar. It was Nicole Sullivan. I was like,
Mhm.
ah.
Forgot she was in the movie too. I was like, damn. I
Mhm.
watched this movie for the first time way back in like 2012, maybe on Netflix on my fucking laptop in New York while I was staying with family.
That's
I just came upon it and I was like, I thought it was going to be like, I didn't know back in the day that it was going to be a spoof when I turned it on. I thought it was like a legit, thing, and then I was like, oh nope, but it was still hilarious.
because it kind of is more of that in the first 20 minutes again. And I was incredibly impressed how well they recreated a lot of the tone and the camera work, and like it really, really felt like a classic blaxploitation film. Like their attention to detail was really impressive. And then, yeah, around the 20-minute mark or so, they just start leaning really hard into the parody aspect, and it just gets so much funnier. And the whole thing, yeah, was just a riot from start to finish. I love one of the parts that made me laugh the hardest was when he's he's in the apartment and he's like saying one of his catchphrases I can't remember, and the one girl comes out from behind and finishes it for him. Is like, "Bitch, I know that was you. I don't even have to look. I know you're the one who said that." I was like, "Oh my God, this is so fucking funny."
I love when the dude who speaks in rhymes, Bullhorn, messes up, and he just like is like stands there and just looks like completely just shattered it and doesn't know what to do with himself.
Rip Bullhorn, man. That
Bullhorn
was
and
Yeah.
cream corn.
and Cream Corn. They're both very, very sad, emotional deaths.
Oh, and then
And
there's that one guy who was like, I'm gonna get out of here and I'm gonna do something special, and like, showed him the picture of his death, and then he gets
Just immediately.
and then he goes, who saw that come? I mean, where'd that come from? Where'd that come from?
I was like, as soon as he said that, I'm like, oh, Bullhorn's gonna die. This is going to be sad. But yeah, I never thought I'd see a movie where Michael Jai White uh, beats up Richard Nixon while he's using nunchucks. I can now say that I've seen that, and it was glorious for
Yeah.
sure.
Really brutal fight scene.
And for anybody else out there who's interested, there is a cartoon series on Adult Swim that Michael Jai White
I
wrote
had
and
seen that
voices.
before even seeing the movie, and so it was crazy because that show is so exaggerated, and this the more the movie went on, the more exaggerated the movie became, and it by the end matched the tone of the show really well.
Yeah, it's definitely you know, I think it was just very hilarious, very entertaining, a lot of fun. I can definitely see them trying to, you know, do some kind of sequel or spin-off to this. So it makes sense that they did an animated series. I think because the character just has so much potential, I think, as, you know, an ongoing character. Because yeah, and it is funny because you're right, Matt. I think you said it earlier. It's not just that it's just Michael Jai White playing Black Dynamite. He's like playing an actor who's playing Black Dynamite. Because I read that's apparently the way he played it. He said, "No, I'm playing a dude who was an action star who played Black Dynamite." So that makes it even funnier. Because clearly they're trying to make it seem like this is an established like Shaft type, you know, blaxploitation character who's like popular, and that we should all know who he is. And that's again, that's one of the things that makes it so funny is, and I love how again in spoofs like this, you know, it's one thing to do a spoof of something like those dick horses, Aaron Seltzer and Jason Friedberg, who just are the laziest, most piece of shit writers on the planet, and you know couldn't make a movie to save their lives. Where they're just trying to make fun of whatever's popular at the moment for a check. They don't care. There's a difference between that, like something like, you know, disaster movie or superhero movie or date movie or Meet the Spartans and, you know, dog shit like that,
Empire suck.
versus yeah, exactly, all the Starving Games, you know, all those dog shit movies that they made, and stuff like this where you can tell the filmmakers have a genuine like love for the thing that they're parodying, and that's where it comes from, and are actually really talented comedically. Because you can tell that the people who made this have a big affinity for the blaxploitation films. I mean, you can tell in that they hit every single trope. I mean, the movie kind of changes plots like 8 different times just because they keep trying to go with each and make fun of each and every one of the tropes. Like by the time you get to the White House, you're just like, man, this thing has
It's
zigzagged
Not at
all
all.
over the place,
yeah.
but it doesn't lose you. Like because of the nature of the movie, it feels completely, you know, justified. So
Mm.
you
Yeah,
know.
I want Michael J. White to write more stuff because, like, if I know
Mhm.
I don't know how much he had input he had, but enough to at least get a credit.
It's because he had a story by credit and a screenplay credit, so that tells me he was like kind of involved in the creation of the character from the ground up, and was
Did he
maybe.
write Outlaw Johnny Black? Because he just did a
Oh, I've
Western.
heard of that.
I don't
I've
know if
heard of
you've heard
that.
about that.
I have heard about that. I have not seen it, but I've heard.
If it's anything like
Um,
this, I might check it out.
um,
Um,
Yeah, it's an
and
action comedy Western.
with Michael J. White.
Yeah, Outlaw Johnny Black.
Oh, that looks very much up like right up
that's
the
almost
alley.
the exact same poster, yeah. So,
It's not the same director. Oh, Michael J. White directed it. Okay.
oh, graduated to the director chair. Interesting.
Good
Let's
news for
see if
spoof movies,
his
though, guys.
co-writer was
I don't know if
involved.
you've heard yet, but
Oh,
this,
Bullhorn co-wrote this with him.
oh shit.
All right, so it's basically the same creative team. Okay, that could be a fun one.
But like I was saying, Jackson, good news for the spoof movies. The Wayans are now doing Scary Movie
I
6.
just saw that today. Yeah,
Yep.
I just
And I
saw
was
that.
like, you
That's
know what?
wild.
I'll give it a shot. Especially because they can do Scream again.
The weigh-ins are a disease that needs to be cured.
There's so many of them.
That's exactly what I mean. They're like a
Damn.
plague that.
Because my pick was potentially going to be Don't Be a Menace in South,
Well, okay,
whatever.
that's one of the few. That's like them sucking at everything that they do.
But that's the only issue is it might not be streaming availability.
Because that's a
But
movie I have always wanted to watch. Um, but yeah, but to sum up on this one, I think, I'm glad you picked it because I'd never heard of it. I don't know if or when I ever would have seen it. Um, and yeah, just had a blast. I was in the kind of mood last night where I just needed something easy. So it was like, okay, this will be a good, fun time. I can appreciate just the wonderful satire. So very funny.
Hell yeah.
yeah.
Well,
3 for 3 this week.
3 for 3. I'm considering, I think Sam brought this up in a past episode. I'm considering implementing a thing where we actually have a system or something where, like, if we liked all three, then that's 3 for 3. And if we only liked like two, then that's only 2 for 3, or something like that. I'm toying with that idea. We'll see where that goes. But
We each have shots lined up.
exactly.
We
But
get
for
3 for 3,
now,
3 shots. Two.
this has been the latest edition of 3 for 3. All of you out there, keep watching movies, keep watching good shit, and
Tune
if you
in
see
next week.
Richard Nixon, beat his ass for us.
Beat his fucking ass.
Dynamite. Dynamite.
Woo!
There you go.
God damn.